Hi, I'm Kelly with citricycles.ca. I thought I'd take a few moments and do a quick overview video of 3 different trikes from Inspired Cycle Engineering, or ICE in England. We have the full fat on the left here, the Adventure, and the Sprint X Tour or Sprint Cross Tour on the right. Now I do have in-depth video reviews of all 3 on our website at citricycles.ca. There not only will you find the in-depth video review, you'll also find all the detailed specs in terms of the height and the width, and all those pieces of information are on the website at citricycles.ca. There you'll find pricing information and our contact info. So if you'd like to reach out to us with any questions or to schedule a test ride here in Ladysmith on beautiful Vancouver Island, you can find that there. Now we can only ship within Canada, so if you're outside of Canada, you'll want to go to the ICE website and reach out to your local dealer for any questions that you have about that. So all that's on our website. Let me just do a quick rundown of the differences between the 3. With the full fat here, you can see tremendous ground clearance there, especially when we compare that to the Adventure, which still has a fair bit of ground clearance, but when you compare them side by side, you can see the full fat has way more ground clearance. And then the Sprint X Tour here, of course, that's much lower ground clearance, so a much sportier ride. So going back to the full fat, we've got not only lots of ground clearance here, we've got 26-inch tires up front and on the back, whereas the Adventure and the Sprint we have configured here come with a 20-inch, and we've configured them with the 26 on the back, although you could go with 20 as well. So with these massive 4-inch wide tires on the front here, and if you go with the roll-off like I've done here, you can actually put a 4.8-inch wide tire on the back. And all of that ground clearance, this is a trike you can literally take anywhere. So if the types of trails you're going on means you're going to have to roll over some logs, no problem. Curbs, all of those kinds of things, no issues at all. So that ground clearance is going to let you roll over anything. These really wide tires are also going to give you loads of traction. So if you've got a lot of loose gravel on your trails, boulders, just anything that you want to climb up that's difficult, this rear tire is going to give you that traction you need to climb pretty much anything. And you can see that in the in-depth video review I do of the full fat. So this you can do anything with. The only downside really is with these wider tires, there is more rolling resistance. So this isn't nearly as fast as, say, the Sprint X Tour over here. And with these tires, the Jumbo Jims that come with it, they're actually a little bit noisy. So people hear you coming, you get going really fast on the pavement, and it actually, the Jumbo Jims aren't a bad tire for pavement. They actually roll quite well, but they are a little bit noisier. Now, of course, you could change the tires to something slicker to be a little bit quieter, but this is the trike that my wife loves. She loves riding this with me. If we're on a trail that involves going over some curbs, she feels fine on it. If we go over some roots and things like that, she feels very confident. She feels like this trike, in her mind, is very, very stable and very secure. Now, that's interesting because when we move to the Adventure here, the Adventure can do almost everything that the full fat can do, but not quite. We've got a little bit lower ground clearance, so you could probably still, I do roll over curbs, no problem with that. Some logs I can do because we've got a fair bit of ground clearance there. So you still can do a fair bit. Where it gets a little bit dicey is because of the little bit of a narrower tire here. We don't have as much traction. So if I'm on some really crazy trails with typically with kind of big boulders strewn along the trail, the full fat, I just laugh. You get kind of bounced around on it, but you're fine. With the Adventure, you have to start paying a little bit more attention and kind of pick your way through, because with these skinnier tires and with the ground clearance you have there, you can't roll over big boulders, but you can go on logging roads, you can go on hard packed gravel trails, you can go on a lot of kind of flowy mountain bike trails with roots and things like that. So this is kind of a nice almost everything bike. If you're mostly doing pavement and then some trails and some logging roads, the Adventure is great for that. With the you're a little bit closer to the ground, you've got the smaller tires on front. That actually does give you more stability. Now, that's in some ways about perception. So if we go back to the full fat, I was saying, my wife feels that it's super, super stable, and for her it is. But I can tell you that if I'm going 50 kilometers an hour and take a sharp corner with the full fat, I'm more likely to get wheel lift than, say, on the Adventure, and even less so on the Sprint. And that's because when we are lower to the ground, the center of gravity is lower, and so we're less likely to get wheel lift. Now, don't worry when I talk about wheel lift unless you do like to go 40 or 50 kilometers an hour and take sharp turns, because my wife has never experienced that. That's not how she's going to ride. So for her, the full fat is very, very stable. But in theory, when you move to the adventure, you actually are going to get a little bit more sportiness, a little bit more stability if you like to go fast and take corners. Speaking of going fast, that's where we look at the Sprint X Tour. Now you'll notice this has much less ground clearance. And again, you can look at the numbers on our website, but just sometimes it helps to visualize. You can see you're quite a bit closer to the ground there. Now on my ride home from the bike shop, I do actually have to roll over a curb on one of the trails, and so far I haven't bottomed out, so I'm happy about that. And probably, you know, any of the gravel trails I go on, any of the well-maintained logging roads, those kinds of things, that's not going to be an issue, but I'm not going to be rolling over logs. If I've got a log, I'm going to be getting off. If I've got massive boulders, I'm probably just going to turn around and go get my full fat instead. So if you want to still be able to do some light trails and gravel and stuff, the Sprint X Tour will be fine with that clearance, but you're not going to be rolling over logs and things like that. What the Sprint X Tour does, and you can see even with the cruciform here, you can see it kind of curves up and then down so that your whole center of gravity is lower. The seat is much lower. If you look at the seat height on the Adventure and then take a look at the seat height on the Sprint X Tour here, you can see that it's quite a bit lower. What that does is it gives you a very, very sporty ride, so it feels like riding a sports car or a go-kart, or it can be very exhilarating. And it also means you can take those corners faster without having to worry as much about wheel lift. You still maybe want to shift your weight around a little bit, but not as much as you would need to do with the Adventure or with the full fat over there. So this is the Adventure. You can kind of do almost everything. The full fat, for sure you could do everything, but you kind of give up a little bit of the speed, and perhaps with that center of gravity higher, you've got the got to slow down a little bit more on the corners. With the Sprint X Tour, you're more focused on roads and light trails, but going fast and have a sporting ride. So hopefully that kind of gives you a good idea of the comparison between all three. Of course, they have lots of similarities. They're all made in England, really high quality components. You can customize it, so we can go with a high torque Shimano E8000 mid-drive motor or the E6100. You can go with different drivetrains on the full fat. You'll notice I've got a roll-off there with a really wide gear ratio, all the gears inside the hub. On the Adventure, we've got the Di2 electronic shifting. You could get it with a Shimano internally geared hub. We've got bar end shifters on the Sprint Cross Tour there. We've got full suspension on the Adventure and just rear suspension on the Sprint Cross Tour. So you've got lots of different options, very comfort oriented, incredibly comfortable seats, different seat styles such as the mesh or the ErgoFlow, and neck rests, and of course the safety flags and lighting, and lots of great options, and all of that can be found on our website at citruscycles.ca.